I am so privileged this morning to introduce to you Angela Williams. She is a licensed clinical social worker, a mom of a beautiful baby boy, wife, podcast host, and founder of Angela Marie Coaching. Angela has helped thousands to learn, grow, and become inspired to reach their next level of transformation. Congratulations for having your recent article published in Authority magazine titled Strategies for Rebuilding Life After Trauma. Before your particular trauma arrived, it seems like you were living a pretty ideal life. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say so. We were just having a good time. I was running, my own businesses and just really taking it chill and relaxed. I was working before and really had my own struggle with burnout, and so being able to be my own boss and kind of set my own schedule and have that freedom was a joy to me. So that was great.
I think that's the reason a lot of us end up in business for ourselves.
Yeah.
What was the particular trauma that turned your life upside down?
Yeah, so it was the a couple of things related to getting pregnant and pregnancy and having the baby. So my husband and I were trying to get pregnant for a while, and it was kind of a surprise. I was notified that I was pregnant at the same time that I was having a miscarriage. And so that was really, yeah, really shocking to me and very sad. And, obviously a lot of grief and loss was going on with that. Because we had just been trying for so long. And so it was all a surprise and just a lot of emotions at once. And then as I sought more support, we were able to get pregnant with my child now, and he we had a pretty typical pregnancy, I would say. It was pretty mild as far as symptoms go, and then toward the end is where things really got a little more concerning, and my blood pressure rose and continued to rise. And so the doctor said you need to be induced because we need to have the baby so that that blood pressure comes back down. And so when I went in for the induction, things really became hectic and scary when it was closer to time to give birth. We both, my baby and I, were both in distress and had to be rushed into the operating room. And it was like, for me, I had never had any really medical issues. I'd never really broken a bone either, like really have been blessed in that way. But so that was all very scary to me, being in the hospital, having, surgery. There's a potential that my baby wasn't going to be okay, that I wasn't going to be okay. So there was that part. And then also after that, I had continued issues with preeclampsia as a medical condition. And so my blood pressure was still up even, after I left the hospital. I had severe headaches. I had to go back to the ERs multiple times. I had postpartum depression and anxiety, and like the sleep was not there at all. It was just so much piled on, as well as learning how to become a new mom. And so it was just a lot of medical trauma, a lot of, difficulty transitioning and with the postpartum, anxiety and depression. That was also very impactful to me because I had never been diagnosed with anything like that before. So it was all a lot at once.
Just having a first baby changes your life enough
Right.
without all the medical trauma. And even after going home, you weren't able to enjoy that baby because you weren't feeling well.
Right.
Depression and anxiety, what was it like when these symptoms didn't go away after a few weeks?
Oh, it was really hard. And I was kind of like in denial about it at first. I mean, even a licensed therapist, as I am, as you are, correct? Yeah. We know the signs, and so it's different when it comes knocking at your own door, right? Because you're in the first person view of this. And so symptoms, as they continued to persist, I actually began to get afraid, and thought, oh no, what if this is something that's going to stay with me forever? What's going to happen? Am I going to stress my baby out because I'm feeling this way? Like there were so many concerns that went with it. And so, yeah, it was just the worst feelings that I've ever had before, just constantly feeling in fear, constantly also at the same time somehow devoid of feeling. So it was just in sadness at the same time, right? So it was all that in one. It was just surreal. And I also feel that looking back on that experience, it's brought me a lot more, even more compassion to the clients that I work with, moms, anyone that's going through those symptoms. It's really, really difficult to be that full expression of yourself. I felt so anti myself. It was just really difficult.
It wasn't the real you, and it was all
Yeah.
you, and it must have felt very helpless.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have so much respect that you sought healing outside of our traditional Western medicine uh, pattern. What did all of these holistic practitioners do for you in addition to your Western medical team?
Yeah, so I was first put on a like an antidepressant, to address the postpartum, depression, and anxiety symptoms. But it really made things a lot worse. Actually, I remember thinking, "Am I dying? Am I going to die?" Like my anxiety had spiked up even more than I thought, and I was like, you know what? I'm okay without that. If I have to deal with it at this level, that's fine, right? So, I actually have a family friend who is a chiropractor. He's also trained in Chinese medicine and acupuncture. And I was talking with him. We did some chiropractic work together after the birth, and for my son and for me. And when the symptoms weren't going away, I was asking him if the acupuncture would be a good fit to help with the symptoms. And, as I was explaining what was going on, he said, you know what, I think you need a more root-based approach. And that is in Chinese medicine, which for me meant taking a recipe of herbs. And so how he explained it was, and I'm gonna maybe butcher this a little bit, but he's like, basically when you give birth, like that takes a lot of energy out of you, as you can imagine. And the with all the circumstances and everything that went on, plus probably with the miscarriage that I had, right? Like there was blood deficiency and all, all those different things that were already going on with me. But it was really trying to rebuild all of my inner stuff to help me regain that energy. And I think in the Chinese practice, and again, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure in Chinese medicine, all of the symptoms that come out, so the um, postpartum depression and things like that are just kind of representations of what's going on, inside. And so that's where that healing and all of the stuff needed to be replenished basically. And plus sleep and different things like that. So it was really just educational for me. He's so amazing. I could just really, recommend him to anyone, but he really just reminded me like, hey, we got to get all your stuff together and here's the different ways. And so, I ended up having my mom come stay with us. She lives in Michigan, so she lives out of state, but she came and stayed, and my husband and her helped me like be able to kind of sleep through a couple nights, so that I could rebuild, because it was when I was going to the ERs, it was always at night, so I wouldn't sleep a full night, and then I wasn't sleeping during the day. I was trying to feed the baby, and it was a lot.
So in Chinese medicine, their viewpoint is that outer imbalance is created by the inner body imbalance.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
inner body imbalance taken care of, then it helps you balance whatever is the symptoms are on the outside. Sounds pretty smart to
Yeah,
me.
yeah, makes sense, right?
I love that you list giving yourself grace as an important practice in your recovery. Describe what giving yourself grace looks like, what it sounds like. What do you tell yourself? What do you do?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I think for me, prior to being pregnant, I was working on continuously working on, kind of shedding that perfectionist lens that I have taken for a while. And so a lot of that is redirecting my self-talk. So, before I'd be like, okay, you have to get this done, like, let's go, right? Like kind of just like pushing, and what that looks like now, and what I changed it to is, hey, it's okay. If you can do a little bit, that's okay. If you need to rest, that's okay. It was a very gentle and loving and allowing, and forgiving. So I think, even though that wasn't fully the approach, that I've always had, it's so much better now. And when I was medically fragile, I didn't have a choice, right? It was, I literally could only do what I could do, and I had to accept a lot more help and voice those needs and things like that. And I think that's another piece with the grace, is just being nice to yourself when you can't do the things that you normally do, and even less than that, right?
You mentioned how hard it was to ask for help or to accept help.
Mhm.
Why do you think it is so hard for many of us to ask for help when we need it?
Yeah, I think there's a few different reasons. So thinking about, the way that I grew up, there was a very independence focus. So it was, I got this, or, there were messages, right? Thinking about like, oh, if I want to if I want it done right, I need to do it myself, or I need it done now. So I'm going to do it myself, right? So there was a lot of, I have to be the one. And while that is a helpful skill to a certain degree, right? The autonomy, the ability to count on yourself and support yourself, that only goes so far, right? And so I think, why it was hard for me too is, again, I love freedom's my highest value, and that goes with independence, and that goes with being able to do the things that you want and need. And so when that's not my path, it feels frustrating. And I think, people also can take the, thought process of, oh, if I have to ask for help, that's a weakness, or I have to open myself up or trust other people. And that's true. And especially when you're in a vulnerable place, it's scary to do that. It can be very scary, depending especially on your attachment style, or, the different relationships or experiences you've had with other people. So, if you've been hurt before, it's hard to trust, right? If you have a difficult relationship with yourself, it's actually hard to trust outward as well. So, yeah, a lot of different pieces come into play with that. But I think for me, it was a very humbling experience, because I had no choice but to ask for help. Like, I literally couldn't even get out of bed sometimes, healing from a C-section, and right, different things like that. So, yeah, it was a very, humbling and a great learning opportunity for me.
I think independence is part of our American culture,
100%, yeah.
and we equate needing help with failure somehow.
Sure. Hmm.
Pretty has a big price tag emotionally.
Hmm.
We need help.
Yeah.
How long did it take for you to recover your balance?
Yeah, so I'm as I'm thinking back, and I'm sure I took notes somewhere, but I can't kind of find them for the timeline. But, I want to say it took about 6 months for me to get in a better place, fully. I feel that I'm fully better, minus sleep. Right now, we're just in a little bit of a sleep deficit still, but, being able to work through the anxiety and depression symptoms. I think the depression symptoms were cleared up within the 6 months, and I think the anxiety symptoms lingered a little bit longer, but I was able to, start to kind of get a really good grasp on everything, and see a client or two, I think at 6 months or 7 months, something like that. So, yeah, it took a little bit of time for me, and I just like can't even imagine, and some people have, work leave that's only 6 weeks long, and I was like, what would I have done? I don't know what I would have been able to do that if that was my situation. So, yeah, I think that was my time frame, and of course continued to improve. And my brain was so foggy for a long time too, and I think a lot of that is, again, the sleep and just so much going on. Your brains are really trying to form its like identity, right? And neural networks and all that when you're having a new baby. So yeah, it was a lot to kind of put all together, but I'm just thankful it got to that place.
You look very healthy and bright and together, but all of this came to a conclusion relatively not very long ago.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
I have a good friend who had suffered from severe postpartum depression, and I know she'll love hearing what you have to say because she's been fighting her way out of it and has
Hmm.
regained her balance. But
Yeah.
many women need to hear what you've had to share on Authority Magazine. So thank you so much for
Thank you so much for allowing me to share. Yeah, was having a conversation with a friend, and he pointed out, he's like, I think you went through this for a reason. And I said, I think so too. And I know my dad was so sweet. He was trying to be supportive, and but he was like, I've never heard of this. And he asked all the people he knew, right? He's like, did you have this? Did you have this? And he couldn't really find anyone who did. And I think the other piece too is he's a bit older. And so, people looking back, like, you forget too. I was talking to one of my relatives who had kids, who are older than me. And she was like, I think I had that one, one, right? So it's like that there's also that protective mechanism in your brain that makes you forget. And so that's just such a fascinating, it's all very fascinating to me as a lover of studying the human brain and behavior and all of that. But also, yeah, it's very impactful for people to know that it's like, because it feels also isolating and it can feel shameful too. Like, I can't do the thing that I'm supposed to do, right? And so I think it is helpful to hear other people's experiences and stories. So thank you for allowing me to share.
Well, I think so many women that have experienced something like you
Yeah.
go through it alone.
Yeah.
You mentioned it being very isolating. It feels
Mhm.
very lonely because
Yeah.
it's not the normal
Right.
experience of having a first child. Well,
Mhm.
thank you again for spending some time with me this morning and for all the wonderful tips you wrote in your article. I recommend our viewers read the entire article because there were far more tips than we shared with you on this video. And also, I love your blog, your podcast called The Bigger, Braver Life Show. What a
Yeah.
great title.
Thank you.
Where do you broadcast?
Anywhere that you can listen to podcasts, it is there. And so you can also, visit my website, angelamarie.co, and there's more articles that go with the podcasts as well. Yes, but thank you. And I'm going to actually record an episode later today. It's more on another mom's going to join me, and we're going to talk about our experiences and how to prepare for maternity leave and all the things that, we wish we knew. So definitely join in to hear more of that.
I agree with your friend that there was a good reason why you went through what you did, so you can share the wisdom that was so hard won for you.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you again for being with me this morning and for writing that article. This is Angela, I'm sorry, lost your last name, Williams, Angela
William.
Williams, and her podcast is called The Bigger, Braver Life Show.
Yes.
You have a wonderful day, Angela.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Nancy. You too.
Bye-bye.